Welcome. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my process for painting this completely blue landscape painting. So check it out, it's pretty cool. Thank you for tuning in today. And there's my reference photo up in the top left corner. Just a random reference photo that I found online. And I start out with a pencil sketch, usually like an HB pencil or a B pencil, it doesn't really matter. Any kind of pencil is fine. And I just draw in some light lines on the paper here, watercolor paper. I'm using Arch's 140 pound cold press, 100% cotton paper. So I'll just walk you through kind of my mindset of everything while you're watching this, watching me draw, sketch, and paint. Try to give you some insights on what I was thinking, what I was going about, how to do this. And hopefully in the future, you can apply all of this knowledge and tips and things to your own paintings, your own sketches, and create something great. So everything at this stage, very loose, very light. You'll see that the sketch doesn't even take that much time, and I'm being very deliberate about it. The main thing I'm focusing on is placement, composition, placement. Of course, the photo itself is already pretty good. Don't have to change much. And the thing I'm focusing on right now, I'm drawing the palm trees, which is my main focal point. So I like more detail and contrast and those kinds of things to be around the focal point, the center of interest. And the way that I'm placing these trees, the way that I'm drawing them, it's not accidental. I'm not just randomly putting them on. I'm moving them in a way or changing their angle in a way that I find pleasing to me. And it's something that takes time. You have to look at a lot of different art and you have to create a lot of art. Over the years, the last 10 years, 11, 12 years, I've created hundreds of paintings and drawings. And I just like certain things to be placed a certain way. And it's something that's intuitive. You have to figure it out on your own. Go read some books on composition, watch some videos, go look at the museum, go look at some great art, take some photos of it, and just try to break it down, try to understand what they were doing. You know, don't overthink it too much, but have fun and try to understand what looks pleasing to you. So I'm pretty much almost done with the sketch part here. We're going to get into the watercolor paint. And for this painting, I only used ultramarine blue and ivory black. And I only used ivory black at the later stages to get the ultramarine blue just a little bit darker. So this is pretty much a monochrome painting. And I was just doing it as an exercise. It's pretty fun. When I did this painting, it had been a while since I've done any watercolor painting, probably a couple months, unfortunately. So doing this kind of monochrome sketch, monochrome exercise, this kind of helped me just loosen up and get back into it. So normally when I start out with a watercolor painting like this, I usually start at the top of the painting. So it's kind of three things I end up doing. I start at the top of the painting, I start with the background of the painting, and I start with the lightest parts of the painting. So that's what's kind of cool about watercolor is you kind of hit all of these different kinds of areas just in the first stage, right? We're hitting the background, the lightest areas, and it's also, we work from like top to bottom, normally. It's not always the case, but it's kind of the traditional method. And as you'll see as this painting progresses, you'll see that I struggled with this mountain in the middle, this background mountain. You'll see that I struggle with it a lot. And the thing I struggle with is getting the value correct. And I think I was kind of overworking it. I wasn't being bold enough. We'll let the video keep going, but you guys will see as it progresses. So this is the first few stages. We're just doing I'm just adding some washes, the first layer of washes to the paper. And I'm just taking note of the little cars or objects down there next to the trees. It's like some cars and stuff. So that kind of helps give a little bit of scale to this painting. The trees in the foreground, they'll also, like the bushes and stuff, they'll also give some scale. The ones that I'm painting in right now, a little bit darker. So you have to realize, sometimes I'll let some of the layers dry a little bit before I add more paint. So it's something to be aware of. It's something you have to practice with. I could tell you, oh, wait 5 minutes or wait 10 minutes, but your painting may not be dry enough. It may be wetter. It's something you have to figure out on your own. But what I want you to get from this video is like the main concepts, kind of composition, the layering, how to do this, how to work from light to dark, top to bottom. Focus on the focal point, the center of interest. Like, try to plan all the stuff ahead of time. Try to understand what you're going to do, what you're trying to achieve. That way you can kind of avoid overworking or kind of just painting aimlessly without knowing where you're going to arrive at. So now I'm using a small little hand fan. I need the whole painting to be dry at this point so I can move on to the next layer. And you'll see here now I'm putting just clear water down because I want to paint wet into wet. And I'm going to darken this mountain. And like I said, I struggle with this. I struggled with this mountain. I thought it was okay earlier, but it kind of dried too light. And I needed it to be a bit more dark. I needed more separation from the sky. And you can see what I added. It didn't really even do anything. So I'm really struggling with this part. And it happens sometimes. I mean, that's the thing. This is the reality of painting, right? Sometimes this happens. Sometimes you're going to struggle. It's part of the process. It's part of the learning process. Every painting is different. You can see I'm still trying to add more pigment, but it's too wet. There's too much water. I need to be more bold. There we go. Starting to get there. And I realized when I'm doing this, looking back at it now, I should have been thinking more about simplifying it overall. Instead of like trying to get the mountain to be this perfect color or perfect shade, I should have just simplified it more. I should have been more bold. Just focus on simplifying. Finally here, it looks like it's pretty dark now. It's a bit more dark. So sometimes with your painting process, you're going to run into problems, you're going to run into issues. And that's the thing about these videos that I show you, these kind of tutorials or tips or whatever. This is real. It's not like everything I do is perfect or there's no mistakes or struggles that I run into. You're going to have struggles, you're going to have to face them. And you can see I'm drying it again. I'm still just struggling with that. But the important part here is that I persevered. I kept going. I did what I thought was best, and then I just moved on. Like, okay, I think that's dark enough. Let's go with the focal point. Let's see what I can do here. So this is where I kind of added some ivory black to the ultramarine blue, made it a bit darker. It's still a very dark blue. It might look black on the video here, but it's actually a very dark blue. And notice there, I'm doing some dry brushing technique. And it's really fun to do. And the way to do it is you want to use less water. So you have more pigment, less water. And then when you go over the paper like that, you get the nice texture. And I think it's really cool, man. It just adds some nice life to the painting, some texture, some interest. And this is my focal point. This is my center of interest. This is where I want that interesting things to be happening, the texture and the contrast and the detail, so to speak. Also take note that taking my time here, not going fast or anything. There's no, like, I'm doing this in the studio, working from a reference photo. There's no reason for me to like be rushing or anything. Just take your time. You know, a painting like this took me about 35 minutes, maybe a little bit longer with some of the fan and trying to dry the painting. So on a side note, I cannot stand using tiny brushes like this, to be honest. So I was doing my best. Like, I thought this would be the right size to use for this. And you see I'm struggling here trying to get some decent looking leaves, getting some nice dry brushing, but it's just not holding enough paint for me. Yeah, that one really started suffering. There we go. We got the bigger brush now. And this is where I'm going to get some nice kind of palm leaves, some nice shapes. Something that I will recommend to you is to try to always use a bigger brush if you can. If you can afford to use a bigger brush for whatever it is you're painting, try to go with the bigger one first. Stay away from the smaller brushes. I honestly, even the brush size I'm using right now, it's usually too small for me for this kind of painting, for this kind of small sketch. I like using a bigger brush, but at the time, this one was like perfect size for these leaves, and I wanted it to be a little bit more detailed. So I opted for just a slightly smaller brush than I normally use for the rest of the painting. And with these details and stuff here, these palm leaves, since this is my focal point, I have to be careful here because it's very easy to overdo. So I have to be careful to balance out, you know, the interest, not adding too many leaves or too much going on. And I'm kind of at towards the end of the painting, so I have to really be careful. I'm kind of probably at the last 10% of the painting process. And take note there, I'm using my finger. I use my fingers a lot when I do watercolor painting. And sometimes it's, I need to make sure my fingers are clean before I start smudging, but because I do it so much, I end up getting paint on my fingers. But sometimes your fingers are the best tool for the job. You could see there, I kind of like softened a lot of the edges, smudging things. You can't really do that with the brushes. Sometimes you just got to get your fingers dirty. It's a lot of fun too. And it's effective. That's really the most important part. So now we're just adding some little details there for the cars and stuff or whatever it is. It's just suggested detail. It's kind of nonsense. But I'm trying to just give some scale to the scene overall. You know, maybe like people standing there. There's like a little figure I'm going to put in. Oh, there we go. A little suggested figure or something. Who knows? It's not really enough, but it is what it is. And we're getting to the end here. And see, I got to be careful not to compete with that main focal point. I did want to add in a little bit more darks here and there, but I have to be really careful about this part because I don't want to draw attention away from the focal point, but I have to keep the whole entire scene in mind when whatever I'm putting down. I got to I got to pay attention to how it's affecting the entire painting. Yeah, look at that finger action now. That was really good. Get rid of those sharp lines. I just brought some of these lines in to kind of create more interest toward the focal point. Hopefully it added some texture and stuff there in the foreground. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this painting. Let me know down below what you guys think when you see the final here. There it is. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something from it. Hopefully it was valuable. Anyway, guys, I will see you on the next video. Take care of yourself. Peace, my friends.